Bum 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 dun 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 dun. All right, 8-5. I am live on both platforms. Bum bum bum. Great, live indeed. All right, so bum 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 bum. If you can see me, folks, on LinkedIn and on YouTube, you could let me know. You could let me know, folks. People on LinkedIn and on YouTube. If you can hear me, please say yes, or I'll just do a check myself. Say yes. Okay, YouTube seems to be fine. Yeah, it should be fine. If you can hear me, say something. This line always reminds me of Pulp Fiction. If you're alright, say something. Dimension, what they mention. Getting. So, if you can hear me, or if you can properly hear me, say something, folks. Yes, we can hear you, or something like that. Yes, we can hear you. I guess I'm okay, sound wise. If I'm not, just let me know. Yeah, everything should be okay. So let's begin. It's 8:08. God damn it, I got late. Mr. Ishan Kulkarni says a thumbs up. That's good. That's good enough for me. Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. So, here we begin. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We are having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We're working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we start our day. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Oh, but before we go, we've got to follow a tradition, right? You know the tradition. The tradition of the simultaneous sip. The beautiful tradition of the simultaneous sip. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup or mug or glass or tanker, a chalice or stein, a canteen jug or flask or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. Today I'm having coffee, cold. Oh, I forgot to say here we go. Sorry for my selfishness. But here we go. Oh my god, beautiful. Beautiful. Can't get any better. Highlight of my day, dopamine hit of dopamine hits. So now we begin, right? But you know what the simultaneous sip says, right? The simultaneous sip says that you're not alone. We're in this together. That's such a beautiful thing to say. Speaking of beautiful things to say, petrol's popularity is running out of gas in FY25 as CNG is surging. So ideally EVs should be surging, but there's a huge price differential between EV and petrol and the other vehicles. And CNG has a very low cost of running. So Indian customers are still choosing CNG. It's showing a growth of 19.5%, which is huge, right? Percentage share is of 19.5% as of now. Petrol has fallen from 76 to 57. Diesel is at 18.5, but diesel has age limitations as far as the whole play is considered, which could be a problem for the diesel ecosystem. So CNG is surging, which shouldn't be hard to guess, right? Because if you can imagine, a lot of the sales of this data with passenger vehicles is commercial vehicles, and commercial vehicles are still very very strongly going for CNG, right? So doesn't surprise me. Consumers too steering towards savings, which is nothing new as far as the Indian consumers are concerned. Speaking of Indian consumers and speaking of savings, magnet problem isn't getting solved anytime soon, it seems. The whole rare earth magnet scene, you remember, folks? Viewers of Thinker's Frequency would know that we discussed a lot about rare earth magnets and how China controls 60% of its mining and 90% of its refining and production. And China has held the world on ransom by blocking the supply of this rare earth magnet. Even though it's a very small shipment, it's not getting solved. And Mr. Piyush Goyal says that you should be looking at other magnet sources. In fact, a German company which makes magnets, a small German, not a small, but a big German company, the CEO is getting a lot of inbound calls because of all the pressure that's being faced by automotive companies because of Chinese magnet ban. And he's saying that this could be the third disruption as far as the automotive supply chain is considered. The first one was, of course, COVID. No, yes, the first one was COVID. The second one was the electronics supply, the chip supply shortage. If you remember, automotive companies were reeling in that chip shortage supply due to which their core electronic components couldn't be made. And the third one is the magnet. And all three of them, without exception, have been caused by China. And but that's that. So that person said, the German company CEO, that the first and the second and now the 2.5 or third disruption made it very clear for all the companies and all the countries to diversify their supply chain, right? And not just focus on China or not just keep it in China. But they didn't do anything. but they didn't do anything. They didn't learn the lesson, quote unquote, he says. Right? Now, the good question to ask is, why don't these companies learn their lessons, as the Germans said? Because of short term thinking, you know. In the short term, it doesn't make sense to actually invest in diversification and actually invest away from China and actually pick up a fight and actually do the right thing, right? The short term thinking dictates us to be just looking at ourselves quarter by quarter, and that's what leads to these outcomes, folks. You know, Los Angeles city is burning, US. Again, something political, we not go deep into it. But Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, said that Trump should uh, just arrest me and put me in jail. Just like Indian Arvind Kejriwal used to say, "Fansi mein chada do mere ko." You know, and this is a very similar. So the beauty of U.S. politics and Indian politics is that it's very, very similar, very similar. You know, so if you remember, a lot of protests happen as far as Indian place considered, right? To block the authorities from working. Shaheen Bagh, farmer protest, and all you know the drill, right? CAA protest and so on and so forth. Similarly, the entire Western apparatus also works the same way, and then government tries to fight it. Black Lives Matter, yeah. So a lot of this is very similar. So if you look at the U.S. politics scene, and then you look at the Indian politics scene, it's just like peas in a pod, right? Which is very interesting. So, uh, yeah, moving on from the political discussion, US China talks in London, rare earth exports curbs on table. So, apparently, Trump mentioned that he already had a word with Xi and they had talked about rare earth. Turns out they hadn't. Turns out those conversations are still going on. Because to think of it, why not? Why would they not keep going on? You know, rare earth thing is a negotiating play, a power move by China. And why would it give it up before it got the other things it wants, right? It just doesn't make any sense. China wouldn't give up the rare earth thing without taking something very, very solid from US and the rest of the world, because it's just a muscle flex, right? We can stop your supplies and the whole automotive industry could come to a standstill. Apparently, in yesterday's news, there was a report that Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis have gotten permits, but again, that news is in a limbo. You never know. It's reported like that, but then if it was reported, why are these people talking? And why couldn't other people do the same thing, right? So a lot of diplomatic talks are on. Apple to open AI tech to developers. So we discussed that Apple stock has been down 19% in the last quarter or so, and that's because Apple Intelligence hasn't really made any moves as far as the whole play is considered. And Apple Intelligence. So I once had a discussion with an NYU guy, business guy, and he said Apple Intelligence is gonna kill it because it's on device intelligence, and on device intelligence, the beauty is that people would not trust the AI providers because they train on your data and security and safety features. And on device means that on device is basically Facebook learns through servers, right? It collects your data, sends it to the server, and so on and so forth. Snapchat works on device. So the AI, the machine learning which Snapchat does is on device. So it basically brings your the model to your machine, and then it works, right? So Apple Intelligence was looking at something like that, but it wasn't going to be successful. But a lot of armchair analysts like me were essentially talking that no, Apple Intelligence might just be working out. I wasn't bullish on it, and apparently Apple has is opening up the AI tech to developers. Apple's stock was still down. It slipped 1.5% after executives took the stage at the Apple conference. That's interesting, right? You step on the stage on your conference and the stock goes down. Oh, that was a nice sip. albeit not simultaneous. Anyway, Department of Telecom has asked the states to actually use BSNL and MTNL, which has rattled a the telecom operators, the private ones, the Bhartis, the Reliance, the Vodas, because they say that they should be competing fairly, not because of preference, because we are going to go under if such a large order is taken away from us. Apparently, government places really big orders to okay plan to, yeah, so big plans. Of course, state departments have huge budgets. A lot of spending which happens in this country is government spending. So these people are protesting, but the government says, "What do we do? We've spent like 3.2 lakh crores since 2019 as a revival package. 3.2 lakh crores is one lakh crore is 12 to 14 billion dollars. So 3 lakh crores, 3.6 billion dollars, 4 lakh crores. I'm sorry, 36 40 billion dollars approximately. So these people have spent like 40 billion dollars in reviving BSNL. Well, they gotta feed the monkey. Customers are not gonna be flocking towards BSNL anytime soon. So what happens now? Which reminds me of a very good book by James Headley Chase. What Happens to Me Now? It was a small novella, thriller, very nice. Steep rate cut set to provide NBFCs a healing touch. So viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that we talked about RBI cutting rates, right? And when RBI cut rates, we discussed how it's going to be a good news for the banking sector and also the consumption sector. So these people have been rooting on it. And Monday, right after our conversation, stocks went up, Nifty went up. They're looking at the same thing. So analysts say that consumption might just have an uptick, and that could lead to better earnings for all the consumer companies, and that could lead to better rewards. And those analysts are a little late. Who said it first? Me. But no, it wasn't a big deal. Big deal. So yeah, NBFCs had been reeling under a lot of pressure because of bad loans. So they had given a lot of bottom of the pyramid loans to people, uh, and they had backfired. They had serious recovery issues. But what has happened is now the norms are set. Now the SOPs have been defined. Now RBI has actually taken a very very firm stance on whatever happens to these loans. But so now these people would be better off, the NBFCs, which is great news, which is absolutely wonderful news for everybody in the NBFC play, because the banks, they have a different when repo rates are cut, when interest rates are cut, a lot of it translates to bank, but NBFCs have a slightly different modus operandi, so they might just be able to uh, make use of it first. Motherson's plans for Merrily run into US fund barrier. Okay, so for people who don't know, Motherson is the largest in automotive equipment supplier in India. Automotive part supplier, Motherson is like a $25 billion group, if I'm not wrong. So, and Merrily is a company which has been funded by, you know, SVP and so on and so forth. So, I'll just tell you a little about it. It's a large car parts company. It was created by KKR's Japanese company. Okay, when Calsonic bought Marelli. So to buy Marelli, Magneti Marelli, they took huge loans. The KKR Japanese company, and now Marelli is in a 4.5 billion dollar debt, right? In just a few years ago, KKR had to inject a lot of money, like $650 million, and then they had to write off like 2 billion of Merrill's debt because of poor performance. Basically, pandemic hit, and a lot of money had to be injected, and a lot of debt had to be written off. Now Merelli is actually looking at uh, bankruptcy, Chapter 11, and it's going to restructure again. And in this process has come Motherson, uh, our Indian Motherson company, the Samvardhan Motherson India, right? And they have readied a $2 billion package for it. But there's a player called SVP, which is Marelli's lender. Now it's trying to block Motherson's takeover bid and wants to take over Marelli on its own. So it's a lender and it's blocking Motherson's offer by offering, whatever uh, takeover bid it can offer. And now the Merrily board and its lenders are deciding with whom to go. So competing bids, KKR wants out. SVP, the lender who's trying to block Motherson's bid, has an inside edge because though it's you know it has a position as a lender and it has influence on what happens, who they agree with. So this is essentially the situation. Very interesting legalese which is happening. A lot of to and fro as far as the whole debt thing is considered. Uh, quite a quite an interesting play. Pakistan is essentially looking at a defense budget shoot, despite rising debt and everything. Pakistan is a total shithole. No surprises there. But it's looking at a defense budget hike. It's a good news for Indian defense stocks, right? If Pakistan is ramping up, Indians might just be looking at something for themselves. And if that happens, HAL, MDL, BEL might just be looking at a fillip, right? You never know. But yeah, it's possible, it's probable. Let's see. Mr. Chirag Patil said, "Hi, yesterday you discussed service companies don't get good multiples around 3. Then how come Ola, Uber, Zomato get good multiples? All these are service companies. Is my understanding right?" Hi, Mr. Patil. Good for you. Glad that you were following so closely the discussion. And I'll give you a very quick answer. So, of course, they are service companies, but they position themselves as product companies. So, they are very extremely ops heavy service companies, but they sort of say the lingo they use is productized service company. And they try that their service is so productized that is essentially a tech play. So while you're right that these companies are not selling technology, right? The people who buy Zomato, Ola, Uber services, they're not buying a technology. Like customers of Ola are not buying technology, they are buying a cab. They are renting a cab. Uber same, Zomato same, and everybody's same. So these people are not buying technology, but since that service has been, uh, they're buying that service, the car, the food, whatever. But since that service has been so productized, these people look at those revenue multiples. And a lot of it is just gas, right? As we always discuss. So thanks for the question. I hope I answered you. But yeah, I was talking about defense stocks. Indian defense stocks might just have a good moment or a series of good moments because it seems past Pak defense budget might just be going up, right? We discussed yesterday how Chhattisgarh Naxal situation has come to a grinding halt, which is a very, very good news for the country. Apparently, very unfortunately, rest in peace, a force member has suffered a setback and he has succumbed to injuries. Very sad. But we are making great progress against the left wing terrorism, that is Maoism and Naxalism. But Maoism and Naxalism, to stop the government from taking such a harsh route against these people, left parties are writing to PM. You know, uh, can't can't be surprised. Is anybody surprised? But I hope they don't succeed as far as their conversations are considered, because if they do, uh, the 49,000 crore project, the irrigation project that we just discussed yesterday, might come to a standstill, and that's not going to be a good news, right? That's not going to be good. But that won't happen. Most likely, India would go ahead. India would go ahead, and Naxalism could be history. Uh, Diagnostic chains are scaling up as COVID cases are surging. So diagnostics chains are saying that we are doing a lot of RT-PCRs and we are scaling up our facilities because COVID is picking up. But no need for the booster now. The medical fraternity is saying no need for the booster just as yet. But yeah, the situation is very dire. So you never know because fatalities. I haven't read anything about fatalities coming from COVID. It's just another bunch of cold that is happening to people. And I hope it doesn't prove to be or doesn't come to be as another sales pitch for these people, right? So, 4 to 6 hours of turnaround, Apollo Diagnostics, 6,000 active cases. 6,000 active cases are okay, but thankfully, no particular fatality record which is setting up, and which is great news for everybody but bad news for pharma companies who always try to sell their vaccines, right? In a very, now, not against vaccines, not saying anything controversial, just saying that it's bad for them. Regulator is set to monitor antimicrobial resistance, animal husbandry and fisheries. So a lot of people you who eat non-vegetarian food might know that a lot of animals who are being fed, they are injected with antibiotics, like huge amount of antibiotics. So I read a book called Salt Sugar Fat while building Spot Health, and also a book called Fast Food Nation. So these two are activist, research-based investigative journalism books on food industry, the packaged food industry as far as Salt Sugar Fat, and Fast Food Nation is the you can guess. So these both of these books talked about the excessive antibiotic injections given to animals who are being fed, which leads to antibiotic resistance in humans, right? Now, if you are being fed with antibiotics on a daily basis because of the diet you're consuming, when you need that medicine, it might not work because you might have had some resistance to it, which is a bit of a problem. So the regulator is actually finding out. Speaking of the regulator finding out, they found out a lot of problems as far as Zepto and Zomato's dark stores are considered. Now, these dark stores were without permit selling food, and that food was kept in dusty racks, and all that dirt and shit was being, they found out a lot of problems with their uh, these these dark stores selling food. Yeah. Not gonna buy any food. Somebody actually bought something from Zepto Cafe, and I'm like, I don't know, but it turns out it was only a packet. So these people have excess packets. Well, well. Three wells is never a good sign. Warner Brothers and Discovery are splitting into two companies. Media is going to a tough time, man. Media is really going through a tough time. You know, speaking of media going through a tough time, did you know that some 5 lakh plus 5.5 lakhs, almost 6 lakh jobs, direct jobs, have been cut since 2019 or 2020, in the last 5 years, just because these people, essentially, the telecom operator, sorry, what are these guys called? The DTH guys, direct to home, TV operators, are dying. We're going to discuss that. It's very fascinating numbers, so let me just talk about that. There's a sharp decline in pay TV subscriptions. Of course, nobody watches TV anymore, right? And that has led to 5,77,000 job losses, according to a study. So again, pay TV subscriber base dropped from 150 million to 111 million. 151 to 111 from 2018 to 2024. So 6 years, and you're basically looking at like 30% decline. And it's expected to fall further to 70 to 80 million in 2030, right? And then cumulative revenues have declined more than 16% since 2018, while margins have been hit 29%. So it's just bloodbath going on. And viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that we discussed how these people have been given a 10,000 crore bill by the government for spectrums and so on and so forth. Like these companies were crying that, man, we don't have money to pay. We are losing customers left, right, and center. What do we do? And then the government said, hey, here's the spectrum bill, by the way, which you haven't paid. So go screw yourself. Not a good news for the TV industry, but very sad for the job losses, man. Where do these people go? It's just full on onslaught, absolute onslaught, right? What do you think happens to the TV industry now? What do you think happens to the pay-per-view guys and, sorry, DTH guys? Do you think they would be able to sustain the onslaught for a long time? For how long can they take this? From 150 million to 70 million in a matter of 12 years? That's an industry vanishing, right? Vanishing, linear TV. But despite that, these people are saying no, that linear TV will still uh, show signs of resilience and so on. Of course, these people are gonna say, like Mr. Goenka from Z and the head of Sony and the head of Tata, they'll no, we're gonna show resilience. But what resilience do you expect these guys to show? Not much. They have very little going on. By the way, did you know something about P2M? So P2M is a new technology which India is exploring to save the TV guys. And how it's looking at saving these TV guys is directly streaming TV to the phones. So what if your phone could directly get the TV airwaves, right? At the moment, the TV channels are at a serious disadvantage. Why? Because everybody's on the phone, right? And these people have nothing to counter it. And nobody's watching linear television anymore, so the channels are going down, right? But what if channels could be directly streamed on the phone? How does that sound? That sounds like a very very good idea for saving the TV industry, and it sounds like a very very good idea to set a level playing field. Like, what is my fault? Imagine I'm a TV guy. Imagine you just started a TV channel, right? You have to abide by all the regulations which TV has, which OTT doesn't have. OTT has a self-regulating body. TV is, regulated by government agencies. So you have to abide by all the regulatory channels. You have to abide by a code of conduct. You have to abide by journalistic standards. You have to abide by all these things, right? Advertising, reporting, everything. And then what happens? Then you get screwed because the person making reels on Instagram doesn't have any of those restrictions, right? And he has better access to audience because people are not watching TV anymore. They're like spending 6.5 hours on the phone every day, right? So why did you start a channel, right? You can't even show a movie with some nudity on it because the TV wouldn't allow it. But these OTT platforms are allowed. So you have to have some level playing field, right? Either you cast the same restrictions on the OTT guys, or bring TVs on their level, take off the restrictions there, right? How does that sound to you? That was TV. Shine Reliance Retail to sell India made clothes around abroad within 6 to 12 months. So Shine is a Chinese player, Reliance is the Indian partner, and these people are looking at taking made in India clothes to abroad. Right now, Shine has just a license agreement with Reliance. So Reliance only has a license to operate Shine stores in India. But they're probably looking at taking this to a next level. Reliance has contracted 150 garment makers and is in talks with 400 more to expand their supplier base. You know, things might just be looking good for the Chinese and Indians. Advent buys into animal drug maker Felix Pharma. Advent Pharma is buying Felix Pharma, which makes generic drugs for the veterinarian market. Good news, good news, good news. Nothing. The private equity fund will invest $175 million for a significant minority stake in the company. Good for animals, I guess. Single specialty hospitals boom on strong demands. Market size likely to double, $31 billion. 40% of market share of single specialty hospitals in 2028 versus 30% now. 79 billion India's total private healthcare market, and good growth numbers as far as single specialty hospitals are considered. And a lot of action is happening, right? Manipal, we thinkers frequency audience will know. We discussed about how Manipal was looking at taking over another chain. Then we talked about IVF clinics getting a lot of money. We discussed Indra IVF already had a huge valuation. They raised a lot of money, or they got acquired. And yesterday, just yesterday, somebody, an IVF player, got some money, right? The 100 million, yeah, the 450 million valuation, 100 million round. They were getting acquired at a 450 million valuation. That's how that three multiple came. What was that clinic? ART clinic. ART clinic. I hope you guys are following. This is interesting, right? We are building up our knowledge, and that knowledge is essentially going up because it's compounding. So in these 16 days, a lot of knowledge compounding has happened. We have been able to track a lot of stories and how they've been able to move forward. The Day of the Jackal author Frederick Forsyth has died, 86. Not a business news, but I loved The Negotiator, the book. Good book, Frederick Forsyth. Rest in peace. So looking at, what are we looking at? So we've already discussed a lot of things. Okay, electricity and housing indices to be tweaked in revised CPI. Now, this is again a build-up of the knowledge that we've acquired very recently. And you remember that knowledge, right? How we were essentially looking at the World Bank looking at the poverty rates. So the measurement of poverty, right, happens through consumption, not through earning. And how is that consumption measured? And how that consumption measurement gets tweaked, and how it leads to different outcomes, right? Earlier, they used to be measuring consumption with a universal reference play, right? Where they used to ask somebody what they bought in the last 30 days, which wasn't as tight because people used to be missing a lot of purchases they made, right? Then they tweaked it to a three-pronged approach, which is MMR something multimodal, where they multimodal reference play something, where they asked, okay, what are the daily items you buy? Okay, what are the monthly items you buy? Or what are the heavy purchases you made in a year? And due to that change of measurement, people could record better consumption story, or a clearer or a deeper consumption data. And because of that consumption data, poverty levels came down, right? Interesting way how data analysis works, right? Now the same thing is being done with the electricity and housing index. So right now, how they look at electricity and housing indices and that consumption is by average unit price, right? So they just measure the average unit price, and then they put in that in the inflation score, and that's how they measure inflation. But that, or consumption, but that's not right if you think about it, because there's a lot of slab movement as far as electricity consumption is considered. In winters, electricity consumption goes down. In summers, it goes up. When it goes up, the prices go up, and then there's fixed meter charge, and there's this moving meter charge. Who's gonna account for that? Turns out these people are gonna account for that starting now. They're looking at changing how this thing is measured so that the consumption story can be more accurately measured. Because once that is measured, the CPI will be more accurate, and then policies can be made. And then also, if data is more accurate, you can be looking at a better representation of things, right? Electricity insight to capture slab-wise data, just as I told you. Housing index to exclude government and employer provided accommodation, okay? To include fixed in meter charges, just like I told you. Will better reflect seasonal variation in household consumption, like I told you. Rural household index to be included, okay. So now we think, better inflation data, or better, more accurate inflation data can be expected. India EFTA trade pact to come into effect in September. So Mr. Piyush Goyal doing great work. All hats off to him. Has been trying to get the FTA rolling as far as the whole European thing is considered. So he said it might just happen. These things take a lot of time, but if everything goes well, we might just be able to do it by this year. You know, that would be great. But seems like it has moved even forward. It's moved even forward, right? It's now looking at ending at in September. And $100 billion in investment commitment by the bloc in 15 years. And what would be good for us is knowing where this investment is going, because that then we'll know where the stocks were going, right? Uh, Special Economic Zone (SEZ) proposals get on. So, Board of Approval for Special Economic Zones has approved Micron Semiconductor Technology India and Hobali Durable Goods Cluster to set up zones for manufacturing of semiconductors and electronic components, said the government. Well, this is no news for the viewers of Thinkers Frequency. We've been following these updates very, very closely. No major update there. Niti Aayog is looking at major revamp of AIMS Delhi. That's no problem. Okay. Nifty has topped 57,000, likely to continue hot run. Well, who told you? Not a big deal, right? We saw it coming. We saw it coming way back when we started, like 16 days ago. We talked about the possibility of rate cuts and how if rate cuts happen, the banking sector will get a fillip, the stock market is going to get a fillip, and the consumption is going to get a fillip, and that's exactly what happened, right? So now we are looking at it, and Monday we saw the market heating up, and it should continue for some time. Speaking of what cannot continue and what can, from Wednesday, banks cannot queue up daily to borrow from RBI. Quick background on this. So this has been a change of play for the Indian banking and regulatory play. Earlier, the biggest problem which the Indian financial space was going through was the lack of liquidity. So liquidity was getting crushed. Why? Because people were not saving money in banks. People were essentially investing in equities, and because equities were giving better returns, so people said, why would we go to banks to save money, right? We should just put it in the index or the mutual fund or something like that. And because of that, banks were having a very serious shortage of cash and liquidity. Now that liquidity shortage led to a lot of moves, like capital ratios were decreased and so on and so forth. So a lot of work was done by RBI to handle the liquidity shortage. Turns out all that work which RBI did to handle that liquidity shortage has proved to be good, right? It's worked. And one of those moves which RBI did then, where it had a daily window for borrowing. So Reserve Bank of India said it will discontinue the daily variable rate repo auctions, VRR, variable rate repo auctions. Okay. It was a window where banks could essentially borrow every day. Now let's close that window. Because now the banks are looking at 2.75 lakh crores average surplus liquidity so far in June. Great work by RBI. No, not many people would give them the credit, because not many people would know about something like this, right? It's very hard to understand, but not for the viewers of Thinkers Frequency. By the way, the chief general manager of RBI connected with me on LinkedIn very recently. He sent me an ad and I was like, whoa. So RBI gets a governor at every 3 years, but they get 10 of these chief general managers. So he was one of those 10 people, oh my God. And I was honored, and it was so nice. But anyway, silver is performing well. No surprise there. Do you know why silver and gold are performing well? Because viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that even though inflation is in control, even though the stock market is booming, even though a lot of good things are happening to the economy, there's a serious probability of things screwing up big time. You understand that, right? Because of the whole de-dollarization thing, the whole volatility in the US market, the impending death spiral of the US financial play, it is in serious doubts, right? The entire global economy could seriously get hampered if anything happens to the US debt spiral. And that's why gold and silver are going up, because that's the best hedge against conventional finance, or let's say modern finance. Conventional finance is gold. Banks FD lose edge, retail players turn to high yield corporate bonds. Now, again, not a surprise to the viewers of Thinkers Frequency. Uh, if you remember, we told you that people are not investing money in the savings accounts, in the FDs, right? Why? Because they would rather invest that money elsewhere. Now, since repo rates have been come down, the lending rates have come down, the deposit rates are also going to come down. And when the deposit rates come down, what are you going to look at? More people, going away from the fixed deposits. And when that happens, what you're essentially looking at is options. So currently, the news says tap state guaranteed papers, NBFC, small finance, microfinance with repo rates down to 100 basis points since February. So what these people are looking at, these retail players, they're looking at buying bonds instead of going for FDs, because bonds might just give them better rate of interest. Bonds, as we told our people, could be are corporate papers where a corporate entity essentially gives lending papers to people. It's a security. They give a bond. It's essentially a debt agreement at an agreed interest rate, which is supposedly higher than the banks, so that the company can raise money and people can make extra money. So it's essentially debt instrument, right? So it's very basic. I'm sorry for explaining it to you, but some people might just be finding that insightful and important, right? So RBI is framing rules to curb mis-selling by banks. That's nothing new. Uh, Insurers' new business premiums up in May. Policy sales fall. Nothing new. Premiums increase as private players are driving growth. That we've discussed insurance going up. Uh, in a first in 14 years, PSU banks beat private ones in loan growth. Well, that's interesting. That's interesting because retail loans are growing 22% average amongst PSBs, 5 PSBs, and corporate loans average 10% growth amongst top 5 PSBs. But corporate loans have grown less than 4% for the private players, and retail loans have grown less than 12% for the private players. So 22 versus 12, 10 versus 4. This is surprising because PSUs are supposedly laggards in growth and in activity like that, but suddenly that's not the case. And ICICI and players like these are saying that these people are capable competitors. We are looking at capable competitors now. So that's that. Uh, we discussed about the Motherson's funding plan, right? Very, very interesting play. The lenders are rolling over month on month basis nearly 122 million debt due for repayment. Company's total debt is 4.5 billion, gross revenue is 11 billion, but in comparison, Motherson's gross revenue is 25 billion. So that's that. It's pretty interesting stuff. Rapido to bag $15 million from Nexus ahead of food delivery debut. So we discussed about this at length yesterday. If somebody needs a refresher on that, you can write in comments, because otherwise the regular viewers of Thinkers Frequency would be penalized for being regular, right? But deep tech startup Vecmocon gets $18 million. So it's basically an EV diagnostics, EV battery management, and so on and so forth play. It's getting $18 million. Micro drama OTT platform Flick TV raises $2 million, $2.3 million. Now, a lot of these OTT platforms are getting spurred. Like Stage TV happens to be a friend, Vinay. Uh, Not a friend, but yeah, acquaintance for sure. Uh, what do you think about these local OTT platforms like Stage, like Micro Drama TV, Flick TV, and so on and so forth? What do you think about that? Personally, I think it's not gonna work out. It's again driven by the usual herd mentality of the VCs in India. They don't have any clue on what the production cycles are like as far as movie making and filmmaking is considered. And a very big uh, information piece that they're not looking at is that 95% of the content which is consumed by people on the web on their phones is is reels and as an instant content. So it is not planned content. Planned content, I mean sanctioned production, value dependent shows or movies or TV. That's not, people are not watching that as much. So people are moving forward to more creator level, uh, you know, instant popcorn kind of a stuff as far as content is considered. While these people are investing in OTT platforms. Now, OTT is already a very crowded play. MX Player couldn't raise money. It was sold, it was a distress sale. And even Alt Balaji and everybody, they are just being able to make money because of you know what. And no content platform has been able to essentially hold people because there's so much of competition, due to which I think all of these OTT platforms are gonna bite the dust very sometime soon. Because you know what happens with content is, if you have a centralized approach to content, let's say Netflix has a centralized approach to content, right? uh, the problem with that is that it's very quality dependent, right? It, you've got to churn high quality products time and again, and that's very difficult as far as making movies is considered, because you don't know, right? Some movie might just appeal to somebody, another movie might not appeal to anybody, right? It's a very hit and miss kind of a thing. Movies in general, or production of movies is considered, and all of these platforms have to produce their own content. It's not like they have their Instagram, everybody's just producing reels on their platform, right? So production of content, production of films, essentially planned content, is a very hit and miss kind of a play. And what these people are essentially looking forward to is a local play, very local. So Stage is looking at Haryana, and then there's some Keralite OTT platform, and then somebody else. So all of these people are looking at very local, uh, movies and shows, and making their OTT platforms just basis that, but they don't have a market. That isn't a big market uh, enough for these VCs to ever make money. So either these people will be fire sold to the bigger OTT platforms, most likely they will, or they will just have to shut down. That's my reading of the situation. I'm putting it out there. Let's see what happens. You know. So fintech company Cred gets 72 million at a lower valuation. So Cred actually raised money at 6.5 billion dollars 3 years ago, and now it's raised money at 3.5 billion dollars uh, in 2025. That's obviously almost half of what it raised for 3 years ago. Not good news, but I never understood Cred. I I I wrote something about Cred. It was extremely viral. It got like millions of views, just that particular piece of writing. What I think is, it's just a waste of entrepreneurial opportunity. You know, it's just a waste of, let's say, entrepreneurial talent. Let's say Mr. Kunal Shah, such a great entrepreneur, so well connected, uh, such a big guy in the Indian VC space, this is what he could come up with, wasting people's time with this 4 rupee cashback, turning the wheel, and making another lending platform, another NBFC where they could just lend money to the rich, or let's say, what for? What's the problem solving, or let's say, changing the world mindset, which these people go for, right? Where is that? Like, it's the frankly, Cred's ads have been more useful than Cred, if you take an objective look, because the service or whatever it is, the credit card payment, it's nothing. It's essentially a commodity. You can do the same thing everywhere, essentially. So investing yourself in such an opportunity, despite having all the resources, beats me. But that's okay. That's okay, right? Chip company Renesas says Wolf Speed situation won't hit India OSAT. So viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know that Wolf Speed, a chip maker, is essentially going down, which is a bad news for Murugappa's CG Par. Why? Because Murugappa CG Par essentially had a $2 billion order for Wolf Speed. And now since Wolfspeed is going under, it's basically going bankrupt. What happens to their $2 billion order is a very good question. Is a very sad question also, because what if they just don't deliver, even though they've taken an advance, right? So this was a troublesome situation for CG Par and the Japanese partnership. So Japanese chipmaker Renesas said that situation involving Wolfspeed had no impact on OSAT project in India. So they've been doing an OSAT project. OSAT is essentially outsourced semiconductor assembly and test facility in Sanand. So a lot of people were looking at, would that facility go under, because since CG Par, let's say whatever it is, was its advance to Wolfspeed, if that goes under, what happens to this? So Japanese are ensuring that nothing will happen. India remains a key focus, and Renaissance committed supporting Make in India initiative. That's okay. Very interestingly, Getty and Stability AI are facing off in a copyright lawsuit. So you know how these AI companies essentially disregard any copyright laws whatsoever. It's because they need to train the models, right? And they don't do anything by themselves. So they just take whatever data there is and steal it. Now Getty Images, the crowdsourced photo platform, is suing them, and it might just be a big lawsuit fight. Whatever happens in this lawsuit might just lead to a very big outcome for the entire artificial intelligence play. Maharashtra pulls plug on Blinkit Pune dark store. I told you about it, right? They found food items on the floor. The pest control audit certificate missing. Workers in food area not wearing protective caps. Food items stored on dusty racks and a cold storage without calibration. God damn. I say god damn. But anyway. So that's that. AI has shown unprecedented growth. No shit. I will think about success, what success has taught me after 50 years of working, says actress and entrepreneur Shraddha Kapoor. So what do you think about actors suddenly becoming entrepreneurs? Do you ever think about this? Like, how are all these actors like Ranveer Singh or Kapoor, I don't know, Ranveer Singh, they are like coming together, building chip brands and so on and so forth. Why? Because their core business model is screwed. Nobody's buying tickets anymore. Nobody's buying movies anymore. Their core business model of being movie actors and earning through that is done. And what happens when that particular model is done? It basically, they have to pivot, right? They have to go for events. They have to go and basically salvage whatever brand equity they have for a perpetual income play. So let's say if somebody like Ranveer Singh, knowing that nobody's going to buy his tickets few years down the line and people aren't already, what can he do? Whatever brand equity he has left, he wants to capitalize it in something which will keep paying dividends predictably, right? Because everybody can be an Instagram influencer, right? Let's say Ranveer Singh has a lot of Instagram followers, so does like somebody else. What happens to Ranveer Singh if he's being forced to compete with these Instagram followers? That leads to major dissolution of the brand equity, right? And if that happens, a lot of bad things happen, right? If he becomes a real content creator, it's bad, right? He has to have that prestige, the movie star mystique, to essentially hold on to people, right? To salvage whatever little brand equity he has. So all the actors are essentially become entrepreneurs because they know that the core business model is screwed, which is very sad. Very sad for the movie business. Very sad. Maybe it's good time for writers to shine, right? I hope whatever happens to the Indian film industry leads to better outcomes for writers, because they've been underpaid, they've been under recognized, they've never been given their due. It was always these actors, these dumb actors, taking all the money, all the spotlight, when it should have been writers always. Good projects come from writers. That's why in Hollywood, whatever little prestige Hollywood has, or the perception of quality of Hollywood used to have in 90s, it was because they used to worship writers, right? Quentin Tarantino, Martin Scorsese, Coen brothers, and so on and so forth, even Charlie Kaufman, and so on, right? Cameron Crowe. Yes, actors had their place, but these writer directors were the real artists, so to speak. Steven Spielberg, and so on and so forth. But not in India. Who cares about the writer in India, right? Nobody even knows the writer's name in India, which is saying something. Tata Motors is investing 35,000 crores in passenger vehicle business in 5 years. So Tata had an 11% decline in EV sales, while Mahindra picked up, while everybody else picked up. Tata had an 11% decline in their shipment, right? So that's bad news for Tata. But the good news is that they're investing 35,000 crores. Back in 2016-17, my brother and I had a debate. My brother and I had a bet. He said that Tatas are gonna shine because they're making a lot of capex. They're investing a lot in new cars, new projects, new designs, and so on and so forth. They've onboarded very, very good people and so on. And I said, no, man, they're a Babu company. Whatever they do, the private incumbents will do better, right? And apparently I was wrong. I turned out to be flat out wrong in the next 5-6 years. When Tata started shining with Nexon, with Tiago, with Harrier, and with a lot of cars, right? So Tata essentially led the EV ecosystem. But apparently Tata is losing a bit of its shine with a lot of private players, other private players like Mahindra and all taking it. Let's see what this round of capex does for them. They really did well. Their stock did well. Tata Motors. Let's see what happens now. Global auto companies in full panic. We've already discussed that. No dues allowed to HDFC Bank, says Leelavati Trust. So there's a controversy going on with HDFC Bank, where Leelavati says, a trust says that we did pay a bribe, but there are no dues. We don't have any dues to pay to HDFC. We never took loans from them. Yes, we did pay a bribe to them, to the CEO or something, but we don't have any dues. So very interesting case, developing story, not much information. But yes, it's a case of bribe, so Leelavati bribed them so that they could keep control of the trust for whatever reasons. And apparently HDFC was involved. So the CEO, and they have finally made disclosures. And HDFC stock also went down, by the way, because of this on Monday. So that's about today, folks. Before we leave, I'd like to share a new study that somebody has done, a very premier social science organization. They've studied that if you hang around ugly people, that is conventionally unattractive people, you look pretty. You look prettier than you are, right? And that's one research that's just come out. And another research, which is a very old principle called cheerleader effect, is that if you hang around with pretty people, a lot of pretty people come together, then even the less unconventionally unattractive person starts looking good. So, if you hang around with a pretty person, you'll start looking good. But at the same time, if the pretty person starts hanging around with the unattractive person, they will look even prettier. So, what's the insight here? The insight is that these social science research guys have the best job in the world, that they just could bullshit their way, giving no real insight to people, waste their time and earn money. Good for them. With that, insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis finally come to an end. It was lovely talking to you all. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.